Thanks, Sue. Okay, so I will be walking through the annual report template. Before I go into the demonstration, just going to cover a few high-level items about the template. So as Sue mentioned, the annual report template for the 2023 reporting period will be customized for each of the participating jurisdictions. And this means that it will have custom pre-populated lists for you to select from. And if you did report in the 2022 cycle, we'll have some pre-populated information as well to reduce your data entry. The layout of the annual report template will be in 7 tabs. In tab 1, you will have tooltips, which will provide some helpful information and definitions to the participating jurisdiction about the data elements that are being collected. Tab 2 covers the provider information and is the table 6 in the reporting guidance. Those are the data elements that will be listed there. Tabs 3, 4, and 5 are all of the transaction details and cover tables 7, 8, and 9 of the reporting guidance. If you're familiar with the disbursement review template, this is a similar layout where the transaction information is broken up by the program types. Tab 6 contains the loan and investment performance data, which covers table 10 from the reporting guidance. And then the final tab, tab 7, covers borrow and investee data, which comes from table 11 in the reporting guidance. Again, I will demonstrate this as we're completing the template, but the recommended use is that you fill out the template in order of the tabs, meaning that you enter the provider information first, followed by the transaction details, and then complete your data entry with the loan performance and borrower investee data. The reason behind this is, again, to help reduce data entry. There are features within the template that will automatically populate some of the data elements for you. So if you enter the provider information, it will automatically populate some of the provider fields on the transaction tabs. And then once you enter the transaction details, it will automatically populate some of the transaction information on the performance tabs. Again, here is a brief explanation of the tooltips. So we have provided pretty extensive tooltips within the annual report template, again, to help explain the purpose of each data element. So on the first tab within the template, you'll have a list of every data element that is collected in the annual report, as well as some additional links that might be helpful. You'll have the location of that data element, so which tab or tabs it might be located on, the tooltip descriptions, which primarily come from the reporting guidance, but may have additional details added in by the compliance team. So please be sure to read those carefully. And then finally, it'll cover the data type that we're expecting in the response. In addition to the tooltips tab, if you hover over the column header as you're in any of the other tabs of the template, you'll be able to see the displayed tooltip as well. Another feature you'll notice as we're going throughout the demonstration is the conditional columns. So some columns in the template will only allow input based on the selection in another column, and these are called conditionally required. So if you attempt to enter data in a conditionally required field without fulfilling that condition, you'll receive an error message similar to the one you're seeing on screen here. So for example, in this screenshot, you're seeing an error because incubation and early stage investment call option is only required for venture capital programs. And that was not what was selected here. Conversely, for columns that are conditionally required, when you do select the appropriate condition, you'll see those columns highlighted in yellow. Okay, and then the last feature I want to cover before we jump into the demonstration of the template is the multi-select functionality. So hopefully this is an improvement if you participated last year. But as you may be aware, certain data elements within the reporting guidance and therefore within the template will allow multiple selections, multiple responses for a single data element. So to be able to provide multiple responses, we have made the templates macro enabled. If you come across a data element that allows multiple responses, such as the ethnicity of the principal owners here, you will double click that cell to trigger the selection menu. And then you can select as many responses as applicable. In the selection menu, you'll be able to cancel, clear, select all, or confirm the selected responses. Selected responses will be displayed in a semicolon separated list in the cell after you select them. Okay. Now I will go ahead and share the Excel template and we'll walk through the demonstration here. So as I mentioned, again, this will be a customized template for each participating jurisdiction. So it will vary slightly from what you're going to see on screen here. And I'll point out where your specific data will be populated. So once again, the Excel template will be broken down into these 7 tabs here, starting with the tooltips information. So here on the tooltips, you'll have the list of each of the data elements, the location of those data elements, the tooltip details, and then the data type that is expected. And these are for all the data elements that are collected in the annual report. Within the tooltips, you may also see some helpful links here, such as the NAICS code database, which can be referenced to enter the appropriate NAICS code for the small business. Additionally, on the tooltips, all the way down at the very bottom, is a color legend for some of the color highlighting that you'll see throughout the template. So as I already mentioned, you will see cells highlighted in yellow for conditionally required fields. These other colors listed here will be visible in the column headings and just help you as the user differentiate what kind of data is expected for that field. So midnight blue is business owner data related fields. This navy blue is for the program data, grayish blue for the provider information, and then deep chocolate is transaction data. And you'll see that represented here when we move to our first tab, provider information. So you can see that color coding associated with the different types of data elements up here in the column headers. Okay, and one more thing to point out, again, is the tooltips. You can display those in the individual tabs by hovering over the name of the column here. And the tooltip information that you see in the column header is very likely the same information displayed in the tooltip section here. It may vary slightly from tab to tab if it is specific, to only CAP transactions or loan credit transactions, etc. Okay, so this is the first tab in the template that we would like you to complete, the provider tab. Again, if you participated in the 2022 reporting cycle, your template will come back with all of the provider information that you reported last year pre-populated. For most providers, columns A through I will be pre-populated. For providers that are providing to a equity venture capital program funds type, we will also pre-populate the target fund size. If any of the provider information has changed, you are welcome to update that. And then specifically for the venture equity programs, we would like you to update or additionally include the target fund size, incubation, early stage investment call option, and the allocated funds expended for cost of program services. So I will demonstrate that now. So again, if I was a jurisdiction that submitted data in the 2023 or 2022 reporting cycle, I would have these providers pre-populated for me. And then for my funds programs, I can come in here, update the target fund size if necessary. I can indicate if this is an incubation or early stage investment call option. And then I can also enter the allocated funds expended for the cost of program services. Again, this is only applicable for venture capital funds, and this is only the amount expended for the 2023 reporting cycle. And you'll notice once I enter that information, the conditional requirement and the yellow highlighting of that field will disappear. So for people that did not report in 2022, this will just be a blank tab when it comes to you. And you can just start entering your provider information. For those that did report in 2022, if you have any new providers as part of your 2023 reporting information, you can just start on the next empty line, entering that data. So here in the approved program name drop down, you will have the custom list of your specific approved programs. So that is one part of the template that will be customized for you. So I'm just going to select one here, but again, this will be a customized list for your specific jurisdiction. You can see that once I select an approved program name, the program type will automatically populate from that selected program. So there's nothing that you need to enter here. Just confirm that is the correct program type. Moving on to the next cell is, again, just the name of the provider. And this will just be the legal entity name, the same that is on your documentation. Here you can enter the provider EIN. So if the provider does not have an EIN, if instead they only have a social security number, we do not want to collect the social security number. So you would just indicate SSN here. You'll notice if you try to put in anything else, something that is not, numbers, you'll get this data validation error. We're expecting 9 characters for the EIN. Again, if there's no EIN, please just insert the text SSN. So we'll leave it as SSN there. Okay, moving on to the provider regulatory ID. Here you can see the list of provider regulatory IDs that we accept. Again, please reference the tooltip to see what is allowable, and then you can enter the ID that fits with your provider. If none of these regulatory IDs apply, but you do have some other identification that you can provide for them, you can type the text other. So demonstrate that here. Say I have a different type of provider ID that I would like to provide. When I enter other into column E here, you'll notice that column F becomes conditionally required and highlighted in yellow. And you'll be prompted to enter the other provider ID. Again, just go ahead and enter that ID here, whatever it may be. You can just enter the ID directly. You don't have to specify the type. Okay. The next column we would like to collect for provider information is the provider type. This is a single select option set. So just based on the responses, select the type of provider. If I select any of the primary options, I will not be able to enter anything in this other provider type. You'll see I'm restricted from doing that. And that field will only be able to submit data there if you select other, which again, you can see it becomes conditionally highlighted when you do that. So for minority depository institution, again, here, this is just a single select yes or no if, for the given provider. And then the final three columns on the provider tab target fund size, incubation, and early stage investment call option, and allocated funds expended for cost of program services are only applicable to VC equity type providers. So if they are part of one of your VC equity programs. Target fund size and allocated funds expended for cost of program services are only for the funds type of equity programs. And then we would collect column K here for direct programs as well. So you'll notice if I try to enter, any information in this cell here, I'll get an error message because I selected this provider as part of my collateral support program, and we won't be collecting fund size for providers within those programs. So that is the provider tab. Again, this will come pre-populated with any of your 2022 providers. You can add additional providers that participated in the 2023 lending. And then for those reporting for the first time in 2023, just go ahead and start at the top and work your way down. The provider information will flow through to some of the data elements in the transaction tabs, and I'll show you that here in just a second. So starting with the CAP transaction tabs. In the CAP transaction tab, we would like you to submit the transaction details for any of your CAP programs. If you do not have any CAP programs or you do not have any expended transactions within your CAP program, then you can just leave this blank. So for example, I have a new CAP transaction that I would like to submit for the 2023 reporting cycle. I can start just by entering the unique transaction ID. This is an ID that is generated by the jurisdiction. So whatever process you use to generate those IDs, go ahead and just list that here. Moving into the provider data element here, again, you will see this is pre-populated with essentially the list of providers that you've entered on the provider tab. That's why we recommend that you complete that first. The providers will be identifiable in the dropdown here through a combination of the provider name and their regulatory ID. You can see here for that for this one where we selected an other ID that's indicated as well. So I'll select the provider as part of my CAP program. Once again, in this approved program name section, this will be customized to your specific jurisdiction. Go ahead and select the appropriate approved program name there. Once again, you'll see the program type automatically populates for the selected program. So you can just confirm, again, that's the correct program type. The next set of information will be business details. So here you can enter the legal entity name of the borrower who you're providing the funds to. Here we're expecting the business EIN. Same situation. We do not want the SSN reported if there is no EIN. So either enter the 9-digit EIN associated with the business or enter the text SSN. So in this case, we'll say they have an EIN. Go ahead and move into the business street address. Again, this is just the primary address or main office of the small business that is receiving the funding. If this is real estate, construction involved with the project, enter the address where that construction is going to take place. Here you can enter the city. Business state will be a drop-down selection that you can choose from. Please note that business state will be used to validate if this is an in or out of jurisdiction transaction for non-tribal governments. And with the compliance restriction there, please make sure you're entering that appropriately. Enter the zip code and the NAICS code. Again, please see the tooltips for the link to the database where you can identify the correct code. So here we want the 6-digit 2022. Here you can report the year the business opened. In column M, we'll be selecting the form of the business organization. Again, this is a single select option set. And column N will be restricted and conditionally required based on the response in M. So if I select partnership, I won't be expecting any data here. And you should receive an error message if you attempt to enter that. But again, if you select other as the form of business organization, column N will become conditionally required, highlighted in yellow, and you'll see there that you need to enter a description of the type. Once you tab away from that, of course, additional highlighting will be removed. So that covers the majority of the business information collected for CAP transactions. We'll now move into some of the transaction details, as you can see highlighted in this brown color here. So for the primary purpose of the loan, select one option from the drop-down list. Again, you'll see that columns P and Q are related to each other. If you select other eligible use, you'll be required to enter details in column Q. Any of the other options will be not expecting any data in column Q. Secondary purpose of the loan or investment. So this is going to be the first multi-select column that we're seeing demonstrated on the annual template here. So again, in the tooltips description and in the reporting guidance, you'll see that multiple responses are allowed for the secondary purpose of the loan. And the tooltips indicate here that you can double click into the cell to activate the option menu. So that's what I'll do. And once I double click into the cell, you'll get this pop-up where you're able to select as many options as are applicable to the secondary purpose of the loan. You can clear your options by hitting the clear button. If there's a lot and you want to select all and then deselect a couple things, that is an option as well. When you're happy with your selection, go ahead and hit OK, and you'll see here those are entered into the data cell in a semicolon separated list. Once again, column S is dependent on your response to column R here. So if you select any of these options which have other in the name, you'll be required to enter information in column S here. Okay, moving into the climate aligned investment. This is a single select, yes or no. Just please indicate, if this is a climate aligned investment, and you can see the details of what qualifies in the tooltips. Moving to column U. Again, please just indicate if this investment is occurring in an energy or climate impacted community. Again, please reference the tooltips for the description. Column V will collect the disbursement date. In this case, it is the date the funds for the SSBCI supported loan were dispersed from the provider to the borrower. Again, since this is the 2023 reporting cycle, we'll only accept disbursement within the 2023 calendar year. So entering that. Column W collects the total transaction amount. Again, referencing the tooltips here, we can see this is the total dollar amount that was loaned to the small business. And please do not include any amounts reported under the additional government funds in this section, and do not include amounts reported under concurrent private financing. So for our total loan here of $100,000 here. So then in column X, we're expecting the SSBCI allocated funds expended. Over a little bit. So specifically for CAP programs, this is the dollar amount of allocated funds expended as the approved program's contribution to the CAP reserve fund. So first, let me put in a number here that is going to be well above the allowable. So for CAP transactions, we are expecting a value that is less than or equal to 7% or greater than and equal to 2% of the loan amount. So what that means in this case is we need something between $2,000 and $7,000. So if I go ahead and retry, this is an acceptable value. So please just read those tooltips carefully, or the error message if you're trying to report something that's outside of that percentage. In columns Y and Z, we're looking for the dollar amount of the recycled funding or any additional government funding. If you do not have any data to report, please just enter 0. That is most of the transaction details. The next several columns cover much of the demographic information for the business receiving the funds. So for here, business revenue, again, just enter the dollar amount of revenue. The annual gross revenue for the fiscal or calendar year, so for the year prior to the closing of the loan, and this is likely the most recent year for which their taxes were filed. Similarly with business net income, for the fiscal or calendar year prior to the closing of the loan. So for 2022, essentially, for most of these businesses. Column AC will collect the full-time equivalent employees. So again, please reference the tooltips to see the details of how this number is calculated. This FTE's equivalent will be used to determine if the small business qualifies as a VSB, a very small business, or not. Again, it has to be less than 10 employees to qualify. And here you can just enter the number of expected jobs created and retained. Moving on into the study demographics questions. So please reference the tooltips to identify if these are multi-select or single select for the given data element. So in this case, you can see it's a multi-select. I'll go ahead and double click this cell. Here you can select if the business did not certify as SETI, or the variety of reasons that they may have certified as SETI. Here indicate if this is part of CDFI investment area, future investment area, or by investment area here. Okay. Minority owned or controlled business status. Again, you can enter yes, no, prefer not to respond, or the business did not answer. This is a single select option set. Women owned or controlled business status, veteran owned or controlled business status. Race of principal owners. This is a multi-select option. If you have multiple principal owners who are of different races, please select those all here. Ethnicity of principal owners. Again, this is a multi-select. If you have multiple principal owners who do not identify the same way, you can select multiple options. Same for Middle Eastern or North African ancestry, as well as the gender of the principal owners. In the gender of principal owners option, there is a prefer to self-describe response. If that is selected, you'll notice that column AQ becomes highlighted in yellow, indicating that you need some other type of description here. Sexual orientation of the principal owners and veteran status of principal owners are multi-selects as well. And of course, you can always select a single option for the multi-select if only one is applicable. So the final few data elements covered in the CAP transaction tab will specify the details of the transaction. So here you will select the loan type, select from the option set here. Of course, if you select other, column AU will become conditionally highlighted and we'll need a response there. Moving on to the loan term. Loan term is going to be reported in months. Please provide an estimate if the repayment depends on the borrower's revenue or performance activity. Please loan APR. This is the annual percentage rate charged to the borrower, and this will be reported in a percentage. The interest rate variability is a single select option set, either a fixed interest rate, an adjustable interest rate, or both a fixed and adjustable rate. You can see here other repayment terms, column AY, became conditionally highlighted when I selected a revenue-based, income-based, or other performance contingent payment. So again, some of these columns are conditionally required based on your selection of the loan type here. You'll notice if I select, line of credit, for example, we're not expecting other repayment terms. Maximum interest rate. So please, this is going to be the interest rate at the time of the obligation, not including fees, penalty, interest, or other charges. At the time of obligations means the time that the loan is made. So go ahead and enter that. And then finally will be the dollar amount of the total origination charges. So the amount of upfront fees or charges, including but not limited to application, origination, and document preparation fees. Do not report any reasonable or customary out-of-pocket expenses. And do not report any jurisdiction program fees here. So that is a completed CAP transaction. As you can see, we have now completed an entire transaction in the CAP transactions tab. If you have additional transactions to report for any of your CAP programs, just continue down the list. An important thing to highlight here is we do not expect to see any missing rows of data. So if you have multiple different programs, please just do not skip any rows in the template. Okay, I'm going to quickly move through the remainder of the transaction tabs and just highlight the data elements that differ between the three tabs. So again, you'll see the unique transaction ID generated by the jurisdiction, the provider information, business information, For loan and credit transactions, here you'll have two data elements, fund as source of private capital and provider as source of private capital. Please just indicate, the responses here, yes or no. Again, depending on how you respond to these data elements, you might be required to enter data here. So you can see we're only expecting you to enter data in column R if the responses to both P and Q are no. So go ahead and flip those over to no briefly, and you'll see that we then require the primary transaction source of the private capital and the secondary transaction source of private capital. Primary transaction source of private capital is a single select, and then the secondary transaction source of private capital is a multi-select, where you can select multiple different sources. From here, the study demographic information will be the same as reported in the CAP transaction tab. And then you'll see the same loan terms in here as well. Okay, so for VC equity, I've gone ahead and just provided an example to walk through here quickly as well. So unique transaction ID, program information, business information will all be the same. Similar to the loan credit transaction tab, you will have columns P and Q to indicate if the fund or provider is the source of capital with the same behavior as the primary transaction source. Transaction information is largely the same. I do want to highlight something on the investment transaction amount and SSBCI allocated funds section here. So for the VC equity tab, for the investment transaction amount, let's go ahead and say $1 million. So for this, we are not, if you enter anything greater than 50% of the investment transaction amount, you will receive a warning message, but this is not an error. So in this case, the amount is greater than 50%. And please just ensure that this is consistent with your approved application. So this may be allowable in your particular instance, but just something we want to flag for you. So if it is correct, you can go ahead and hit enter, hit OK, and move on to the next field. Of course, you will not receive that error if it's less than 50% of the total transaction amount. And then, moving to the final few data elements of this tab here. Much of the study information, again, is just going to be duplicated from the other tabs, and the final transaction details will be specific to VC equity. Columns AY through BE, you'll see stage of investment, security type, other security offered, depending on the response here, SSBCI ownership percentage, conversion discount, valuation cap, and type of valuation. So many of these fields are dependent on the response to the security type here. So for stage of investment, we have a single select option set you can choose from. For security type, we have common stock, preferred stock, convertible debt, and then safe or other. So make your selection. You'll notice if we select a safe type, then the conversion discount, valuation cap, and type of valuation cap will be highlighted in yellow. But you'll notice with the common stock security type selected here, we're not expecting response in the conversion discount, and you'll get an error message if you attempt to. So the final two tabs are the loan investment performance and the borrower investee data. So you'll notice on both of these tabs, the unique transaction ID business name and business EIN will be automatically populated for you based on your how you complete the other tabs in the template. We will also pre-populate any of your transactions reported in the 2022 year for you to provide additional performance details. So in every case, you will always see columns A, B, and C, unique transaction ID, business name, and business EIN pre-populated. Excuse me. And then you'll only be expected to enter subsequent private financing, SSBCI funds lost, and equity investment gains. So for subsequent private financing, the dollar amount, SSBCI funds lost, and equity investment gains. Please just report positive numbers for both of these responses, and we'll do the negatives for the funds lost. Similarly, on the borrower investee data tab, you'll see unique transaction ID, business EIN, and business name pre-populated. Here you can update the business revenue information, the business net income, and the year that you're reporting that from. So likely 22 or 23. And that completes the demonstration of the annual report template. Again, we'll provide more details on specific transaction types in the next report training. I'll go ahead and hand this over to Jay.